So, Sophia, what are we talking about today?
Today, I thought we could discuss something that's becoming harder and harder to ignore whether people are becoming too dependent on artificial intelligence.
That's a great topic, especially now. AI is everywhere, at work, in education, in content creation, even in daily communication.
Exactly. And while a lot of people focus on how useful it is, I think it's also worth asking what it might be changing in the way we think, learn, and make decisions.
Right, because the question is not only what AI can do for us, but also what happens when we start relying on it too much.
Yes, and that's what I'd like us to explore today: the benefits, the risks, and the possible long term effects of that dependence.
All right then, let's get into it.
Lately, I've been wondering whether AI is actually making our lives better or just making us more dependent on systems we barely understand.
That's a good question. I'd say both. It definitely makes some things easier, but the dependence part is real too. The more useful a tool becomes, the harder it is to imagine functioning without it.
Exactly. And that's what worries me. At first, AI seems like a helpful assistant, something that could save time, automate repetitive tasks, and maybe improve productivity. But now it feels like it's quietly moving into every part of life: work, education, communication, even creativity.
True, but hasn't that always happened with technology? Calculators change the way we do math. GPS change the way we navigate. Search engines change the way we remember information. AI might just be the next stage.
I agree to some extent, but AI feels different. A calculator doesn't pretend to think for you, it performs a specific function. AI, on the other hand, can generate text, summarize arguments, write emails, produce images, answer questions, and even imitate conversation. That's much closer to outsourcing cognitive effort, not just mechanical effort.
That's fair. It's not just doing tasks, it's doing parts of thinking. Or at least it creates the impression that it is. And maybe that's where the problem begins. People may start confusing assistance with understanding.
Exactly. Someone can now produce something polished without deeply engaging with the underlying idea. A student can generate an essay outline in seconds. A manager can draft strategy documents without thinking through the details. A content creator can produce endless material without asking whether any of it is meaningful.
But let me challenge that. Isn't that more of a human problem than a technological one? People have always looked for shortcuts. AI just makes shortcuts more powerful. The real issue is whether people use the tool carelessly or intelligently.
Yes, but tools shape behavior. That's why I don't like the argument that technology is neutral. In theory, maybe, but in practice, tools encourage certain habits. When something becomes easy, people naturally do more of it and think less about the trade offs.
That's true. You could say technology has momentum. Once it enters a system, it changes expectations. For example, once companies realize employees can generate reports twice as fast with AI, they stop seeing that as an advantage and start seeing it as the new minimum.
Exactly. That's one of the hidden dangers. Technology that begins as support can quickly become pressure. Instead of freeing people, it may raise the baseline and demand even more output.
That reminds me of email. It was supposed to improve communication, but over time, it created a culture of constant availability. People didn't end up with more freedom, they ended up with inboxes full of expectations.
Yes, and AI could do something similar on a larger scale. Imagine a workplace where everyone is expected to respond faster, produce more, analyze more, and create more because AI exists. That doesn't necessarily make work healthier. It may just intensify it.
I can already see that happening in some industries, especially in marketing, customer service, tech, even education. AI is presented as a productivity miracle, but productivity is rarely neutral. It usually means do more in less time, and that often benefits institutions before it benefits individuals.
Exactly. And then there's the question of skill erosion.
That's a big one.
Because once you rely on a system to do something repeatedly, your own ability can weaken. We've seen this with navigation apps. A lot of people have become worse at reading maps, remembering routes, or orienting themselves in unfamiliar places. So what happens when AI starts handling writing, planning, summarizing, brainstorming, and decision support on a daily basis?
People may become less confident in their own judgment.
Yes, less confident and less practiced. That combination matters. Confidence isn't just emotional. It's built through repeated effort. If you stop doing the effortful part of thinking, you may slowly lose trust in your own mind.
That's interesting, because many people assume convenience automatically improves life. But convenience can come with a hidden cost: reduced competence.
Exactly. And not just competence, patience too. AI conditions people to expect instant answers. But many important things in life require slowness, deep reading, reflection, learning, uncertainty, revision. If people get used to immediate outputs, they may become less tolerant of the messy process that real understanding requires.
That's especially concerning in education. Students already struggle with attention and concentration. Now imagine giving them a tool that can instantly generate explanations, answers, examples, and summaries. It might be helpful, but it might also weaken their willingness to wrestle with difficulty.
And wrestling with difficulty is exactly how learning happens. That's what people often forget. Struggle isn't always a problem. Sometimes it's the process through which understanding is formed.
Still, I don't want to sound anti-AI, because I've also seen the benefits. For example, language learners can use it to practice conversations, get feedback, and build confidence. People with limited access to tutors or teachers may suddenly have support that was previously unavailable.
I agree. That's why the conversation has to stay balanced. AI can genuinely access. It can support people who are isolated, overwhelmed, or lacking resources. It can make knowledge more reachable. My concern isn't that AI is inherently harmful. It's that societies tend to adopt useful tools quickly without developing the habits or safeguards needed to use them wisely.
That sounds right. We rush toward convenience and only later ask what it changed.
Exactly. And by the time we ask, the system is already embedded.
There's also the creativity debate. Some people say AI will democratize creativity by allowing anyone to write, design, compose, or edit. Others argue it will flood the world with shallow, derivative content. Where do you stand?
Honestly, somewhere in the middle. I do think AI lowers barriers. Someone with ideas but limited technical ability can now express themselves more easily. That's valuable. But I also think the abundance of generated content may dilute attention and reduce appreciation for craft.
Because when everything becomes easy to produce, it becomes harder to value the effort behind it.
Exactly. Effort is not the only measure of quality, of course, but craft matters, revision matters, taste matters, intention matters. If people rely too heavily on generation instead of development, then the world may fill up with things that are efficient but empty.
That's already happening in some corners of the internet. There's this strange feeling sometimes that you're scrolling through content made for the algorithm rather than for humans.
Yes, and AI could intensify that. More volume, more speed, more optimization, but not necessarily more originality. In fact, too much AI-generated material might create a kind of aesthetic sameness. Things start sounding polished but generic.
That's a great way to put it, polished but generic. And once people get used to that level of output, their standards may shift. They may start accepting coherence instead of insight, fluency instead of depth.
Exactly. Something can sound intelligent without actually being wise. That distinction matters.
It does. And I think many people confuse articulation with thought. A clear sentence feels convincing even when the underlying idea is weak.
Yes, and AI is very good at that kind of surface competence. It can organize language impressively. But humans are still responsible for judgment, meaning, and truth. The danger is that people may outsource not just writing, but discernment.
Discernment is the key word here, because the real challenge may not be can AI generate, but can humans still evaluate what is worth keeping?
Exactly. In a world full of generated possibilities, selection becomes more important than production.
That's actually a fascinating shift. Maybe the valuable skill in the future won't just be creating from scratch, but curating, editing, refining, and deciding.
Yes, though that creates another issue: inequality.
How so?
Because people with strong foundational skills will benefit more from AI than people without them. Someone who already writes well can use AI to accelerate workflows without losing quality. Someone who lacks those skills may use AI as a substitute and never develop the underlying ability, so the gap could widen.
That's a really important point. The same tool could amplify different outcomes depending on who uses it. For one person, it's enhancement. For another, it's dependency.
Exactly. And society tends to talk about access as if access alone guarantees empowerment. But access without education can create new forms of passivity.
So, in a way, AI doesn't just test technical ability, it tests intellectual maturity.
Yes, the more powerful the tool, the more important the user becomes.
That sounds almost paradoxical. People think advanced tools reduce the importance of individual skill, but perhaps they actually increase the importance of judgment.
I think so. Because when a tool can do many things, the person using it has to decide what should be done, what shouldn't be done, what is accurate, what is ethical, and what is worth publishing or acting on.
That brings us to another issue: trust. Do you think people are becoming too trusting of AI outputs?
Absolutely, especially when the answer is delivered confidently. Humans are highly susceptible to confident language. If something sounds polished, many people assume it's credible. That's dangerous because AI can sound certain even when it is mistaken.
Which means the user has to remain mentally active, not passive.
Exactly. AI should be treated more like a draft partner than an authority. It can be useful, suggestive, provocative even, but not final.
I like that. A draft partner, not an authority.
Because the moment people start treating it like an authority, they weaken their own responsibility. And responsibility is difficult enough already in modern systems. Everyone wants efficiency, but nobody wants to be accountable when something goes wrong.
That's very true. We've seen it in business too. A bad recommendation gets blamed on the system, as if decisions somehow make themselves.
Exactly. But systems don't remove responsibility. They distribute it, and sometimes obscure it. That's why AI needs human oversight, especially in areas like hiring, healthcare, law, and education.
Those are the domains where errors aren't just inconvenient, they can seriously affect lives.
Yes, a flawed generated caption is not the same as a flawed medical suggestion or a biased hiring filter. Society often talks about AI in one big category, but the stakes differ enormously depending on context.
So maybe the first mistake is thinking about AI as a single thing.
Exactly. AI in a creative brainstorming tool is one issue. AI used in predictive policing is another. AI helping a language learner practice speaking is very different from AI deciding whether someone deserves a loan.
That distinction matters because otherwise the conversation becomes too abstract. People either become blindly enthusiastic or totally alarmist.
Right. And neither extreme is helpful. The real conversation should be about context, power, incentives, and consequences.
Let me ask you something more personal. Do you use AI every day?
Not every day, but often. Mostly for brainstorming, organization, and language-related tasks. Sometimes I use it to test ideas or rephrase things. But I try to be intentional because I don't want it to become my default mode of thinking.
That's wise. I've noticed something similar in myself. The more available AI becomes, the more tempting it is to consult it before consulting my own mind. Not because I can't think, but because it's faster.
Exactly. And that's the subtle shift. Dependence doesn't always begin with inability. Sometimes it begins with impatience.
That's a brilliant line.
But it's true, isn't it? You don't lose your capacity all at once. You just stop exercising it because the shortcut is there.
Yes, and then the shortcut gradually becomes the standard route.
Exactly. Which is why I think people need deliberate friction in their lives, moments when they choose not to automate something. Not because automation is evil, but because some forms of effort are worth preserving.
What kind of effort?
Writing without assistance sometimes, solving a problem before asking for help, reading a difficult article slowly instead of consuming summaries, having conversations without constantly checking facts mid-sentence, letting your own thinking develop before outsourcing it.
So almost like cognitive exercise.
Yes, exactly. Just as physical comfort can reduce movement, cognitive convenience can reduce mental effort. And like the body, the mind needs challenge to remain strong.
That makes a lot of sense. Maybe the healthiest relationship with AI is not rejection or total reliance, but disciplined use.
I think that's the goal. Use it where it genuinely adds value, but remain aware of what you may be giving up in return. Speed is valuable, but not when it erodes capability. Assistance is valuable, but not when it becomes substitution.
And maybe the deepest question is not, what can AI do for us, but what kind of humans will we become if we rely on it in certain ways?
Yes, that's exactly the question that matters most to me. Every technology changes not only what we do, but how we relate to ourselves, to each other, and to effort. AI is no exception.
So the real issue isn't just productivity or innovation or convenience. It's human development.
Yes, because a society can become more efficient and less thoughtful at the same time. It can become more connected and less reflective, more capable of generating output, but less capable of wisdom.
That's a powerful distinction. Intelligence versus wisdom.
Exactly. Intelligence can optimize. Wisdom has to ask, optimize for what? And at what cost?
So where does that leave us? Optimistic? Cautious? Conflicted?
Probably all three. I'm optimistic about AI's usefulness, cautious about its incentives, and conflicted about its long-term cultural effects.
That feels honest.
It is. I don't think simplistic answers work here. AI is neither salvation nor catastrophe. It's a powerful tool entering a fragile society. That combination deserves seriousness.
And maybe humility too, because we still don't fully understand what habits we're building around it.
Exactly. And habits, once normalized, are hard to reverse.
Then perhaps the most responsible thing we can do now is stay conscious. Not panic, not worship the technology, but pay attention to how it shapes our behavior.
Yes, attention is the beginning of responsibility.
I like that.
And maybe that's the real challenge of this era. Not simply building more intelligent systems, but making sure humans remain awake while using them.
That sounds like a strong final thought.
Maybe because it's the thought I keep returning to.
And honestly, after this conversation, I probably will too. Well, this has been a really interesting discussion. I think what makes this topic so complicated is that AI clearly offers real benefits, but at the same time, it can quietly reshape our habits in ways we don't immediately notice.
I agree. And maybe that's exactly why conversations like this matter. The goal is not to reject AI, but to stay aware of how we use it and what kind of dependence we may be developing.
Yes, because once people stop paying attention, convenience can easily become reliance.
Exactly. And in the end, the real challenge is not just building smarter tools, but making sure people continue to think critically while using them.
Well said.
Thanks, Liam. This was a great conversation.
It really was.